Okay, so call instruction committee meeting to order for August 14th. We don't have a forum right now, so we'll have an unofficial meeting. There's no votes tonight. If another board member does come, we could appoint that member and it would be official meeting. So we can start off with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so tonight we're doing our annual school presentations. We used to call it 90% reading goals. So what we're talking about is achievement and growth data, results of fall academic plans, and 2019 academic plans to address last year's data results. So tonight we're doing the middle school, Spalding High School, and Bud Carlson. So we're going to start off with Rochester Middle School with the principal, Adam Houghton.
Thank you. So thank you for coming to RMS tonight. It's great to have everyone here. I will start by saying it's about 10 degrees cooler in here than the cafeteria. If you remember from our presentation last year, it was very hot. So. All right, so we're going to look through our first our sort of data from last year, and then what we're asked to do is look at a smaller set of data within the larger set of data to look at for some action steps for the coming year. So we'll start with reading data. So overall, our reading data went up last year. Obviously, when we look at the graphs, we see a lot of ups and downs, but I think it's important to show the actual cohorts, because these are by grades, not by cohorts. So our 8th grade, the class of 2023 that just left Rochester Middle School, was 75% 8th grade, 74% in 7th grade, and 70% in 6th grade. So ideally they were going up. Obviously we'd always like more growth than that, but that's what happened there. In our class of 2024, they were 76% in the spring. This past year they were 72% in the spring the previous year. So again, we're going up. As I said, overall, our reading data went up. We definitely had a dip the previous year. Looking at our growth, so again, obviously we definitely saw some growth over year over year. 6th grade and 8th grade definitely helped us along from the previous year. Looking at our cohort data, 8th grade was 58% in the spring. They were 60% in 7th grade and 60% in 6th grade. The grade 7s were 55% in the spring and 55% and 57% in the previous spring. So not as much growth as we would like to see, but I think it's still within that range of where we would see things within our norm. Looking at quartile data, like normal, we do well quartiles 3 and 4. We're not doing as well down in quartile 1 and 2, and when we talk about our action steps, we'll be talking about this more. I think it is positive what we're doing in 6th grade, definitely not when we compare it to the 8th grade data. That's definitely an area where we need to work at for the coming school year. Looking at our math data. Math data went down again last year. So looking at our cohort data, our 8th grade was 67% in the spring. They were 70% in grade 7 and 66% in 6th grade. So this represents the students on grade level measure we use as a district. Our 7th graders were 65% in the spring of last year. When they were in 6th grade, they were 66%, so a little bit tighter range there. But again, we're concerned with that trend there, and that's obviously something we'll be addressing in our plan for the coming year. Looking at our growth data, 7th grade is definitely an outlier historically here, but looking at our 8th grade, 53% in the spring, 51% in 7th grade, 55% in 6th grade. Then 7th grade was 53% in the spring. They were 60% previous spring. So again, This is an area of focus for us for the coming year, and as I said, we'll talk about that data a bit more later in the presentation. Quartile data, same idea. Doing well with quartile 3 and 4. We got some work to do down here, and that's an area, it would be an area of focus for us this year. So what we were asked to do was we've given you a lot of data that represents an enormous number of students in the previous slides. We wanted to come down to a smaller piece of data that was a little more actionable. Like obviously, yes, we want to get our scores up, we want our students achieving, we want our students making growth, we want as many, we obviously want more than 90% at grade level. But, looking at this sort of smaller piece that's more actionable and hopefully help sort of push up our scores, we came across this piece of data that I found really interesting. 6th grade students' mean growth targets fall to spring, and when I say fall to spring, that means the teaching year. So when I'm talking about growth on the previous slides, that's fall to spring growth. NWA also does a spring to spring measure, which would be sort of the end of the previous year's assessment to the spring of the next year. So in essence, we're getting the teaching year and the summer. So before I show you the 6th grade data, let's have a look at the grade 7 and 8 data. Now, what I want to be clear is we are looking at the same cohorts here. These are the same kids going when we go across the data chart. If it's negative, that means we showed more growth fall to spring than we did spring to spring. If it's positive, we showed more growth spring to spring instead of fall to spring. So what I want you to note are the numbers in the last column. Obviously, we would want to see more growth, but as we look at the numbers, they're within a fairly tight range. Now, when we look at the 6th grade with the same measure, we get a significantly more variation between the two numbers. The only thing of interest here is this year we started our summer reading program. That's the only outlier, though the other thing too is the fall to spring growth is lower than the other two. So, but it's definitely a tighter one, and it's the outlier of all of the data sets for this. And as I said, these are 3 different cohorts that we're pulling data for right here. So obviously the green here, this is the spring to spring growth, the purple is the fall to spring growth, and the green represents the difference between the two. Math is a bit more interesting. So again, we're doing the same measurements here. These are the same cohort of kids. You'll notice here we have a couple higher numbers than we had in the reading data, positive, negative. But again, we come back down to a fairly tight range when we look at it over 3 years. When we look at the 6th grade, we see a significant drop. Now, one thing I want to be really clear about this data is the 5th graders take a different version of NWA than the 6th graders do. NWA would say a RIT score is a RIT score is a RIT score. But they are 2 different assessments. They do have some different measurement tools that they use within the assessment. So they aren't necessarily, while they're probably Granny Smith to Red Delicious apples, they aren't necessarily a true apples to apples comparison, but they're close in terms of what the measurement is coming out. But this data alone we found to be significant. Now, what we'll look at as our action steps is we definitely start thinking immediately in transition, because we see these students, these are our students. This is not the elementary school students, these are our students. We're looking, the end measure here we're measuring for growth is here. So we need to be looking at how we can affect the change within our students here at Rochester Middle School. So we had a hypothesis. So grade 6 students are experiencing a historical underperformance that's limiting our academic performance over time. I'm not going to say it's a summer slide. We're seeing it every single year, or at least over 3 years, the 3 years of data I pulled within sort of a range of trying to sort of look at within the cohorts that are in the school present, or were in the school last year. So it brings it down to our action steps. So the first thing, we had found out that 5th grade has become sort of an interesting point for summer school. There isn't a whole lot of summer remediation going on. So we tried in the spring to put together a summer learning opportunity for 5th grade students. We were not able to successfully execute it. We just couldn't get staff. We did start late in the spring to do this, and we were not successful getting staff to do that. But we at least have the template of what this is now. So our plan and our action plan is to begin offering a extended learning opportunity for our 5th graders. Because obviously we're seeing something in that transition. We know what our data is between, for the students we're receiving from 5th grade to 6th grade, we aren't having that sort of opportunity to extend learning. We think it is something essential within that transition process that we begin to do. Our second point is this year what we did is we asked all of our students to do what we call the summer enrichment project. So we asked students to do 30 minutes of reading a week, 30 minutes of math a week, and 30 minutes of ELA a week. Now the reading obviously is they could pick a book of their choice and they could read. Math, we gave them electronic options, so students in our building who are remaining in our building had access to Alex through the summer. 5th graders, we gave them a couple different options that they could use electronically, but we also made packages of worksheets for them to work on fact fluency at home, so we could offer something for families that necessarily couldn't support an electronic resource. English, they did IXL. We purchased IXL for all of our students here. They had access to that all the summer, and again, they also had a worksheet option for students who couldn't access electronically. It was a lot of work just getting that together for our students. Next year we got to work on increasing participation. I'm sure this year we don't have the participation numbers. It's going to be quiet because part of it too is it's building that expectation within parents that we've got to keep students moving through the summer. We don't expect them to be in school for 8 hours a day, but we need them to be reading every day. And even not every day. We say half an hour a week. You could do 4 hours in a day and be done for several weeks, but just trying to get more of that into our community and into our sort of learning culture here, we think is essential to get those two things. Because what we see as a transition issue that we need to correct at our end. Next one, after-school math-specific support. So currently, teams offer after-school support, all of our teams do, but it's dependent upon teacher schedule. Teacher has small children, they have things they need to be, they may not have as much availability as some other people. So, and then other teachers might take that on. What we'd really like to do is see a specific math intervention opportunity happening after school that allows a teacher to say, you need work with this one skill, go here on these days, and it's a consistent opportunity. We have more students recommended for tier than we have spaces for tier, and we've got to find some way to kind of get more support. But what we're looking for is not necessarily the student that needs, say 2 years of math support. We're looking for the student who's at grade level or slightly below grade level, who needs support to keep pushing up and keep getting that growth, because we think that's really essential to our skills of building that over time. We want to increase the opportunities for fact fluency practice. I know from having kids of my own that counting on our fingers is still really common in middle school, and it's something we have to get our students to move beyond. There's something too, as a board, we would ask for your support in helping us make fact fluency more visible in the community. Menus, posters, all those kind of things that we could do to really make this important and visible in our community. I've ordered stickers for all of our stairs, so there's going to be multiplication facts on every stair in our building that our students use. So, hey, maybe we can get a few more facts to stick that way, but trying to get more of that stuff, because I think, and I've always believed, and the research would support the idea that as students know their math facts, the higher level math is going to come easier. And we have to get those skills in. We think that's an essential skill, and we're not sure based on what our math teachers are telling us that skill's been rooted enough, or at least practiced enough. And that's one of the reasons why it shows up so much in the summer, is we got to keep practicing. They might have their multiplication table down in 5th grade, But, you know, summer, it gets fun, they kind of forget about a few things. You know, we need to make sure these things are rooted and making sure that those things are happening at all time. We want to increase opportunities for cross-curricular math vocabulary practice. So part of our opening workshop on the first day is we're going to have our teachers playing math games. So we're going to build in sort of a sense of community and collegiality and getting people to know each other, but they're actually going to play math games. Because we want to reinforce that math is part of everything, and it's not, when I show the math data in here, is not a reflection on our math teachers. We need to make sure that it reflects our school as a whole, just like we would talk about reading. You know, it's okay if I stood here and say, I'm not very good at math. No one laughs at me, no one ridicules me. But if I said I'm not very good at English, most people would think I'm crazy and would wonder why I'm up here speaking to you right now. So we have to change that. We have to make that math it's not acceptable to not be good at math. And we have to build those opportunities. We also have to pull math out of our textbooks. Like when history's talking about taxation, it's math. We have to pull that out. Science, all the calculations that are occurring in science and all the things that need to happen, we've got to pull that out. We've got to get kids seeing this as math. Math is not necessarily just what happens in a math classroom. It happens everywhere, and trying to get that understanding of, math is really important. Like, yeah, there's tools out there to help, but you've got to have the basics, and you've got to understand that these things are really, really important. And as I talked earlier, increase intervention opportunities for students in the lowest quartile. So we really need to work with our Texas program on more data analysis and using more of our tools. Alex, we have the opportunity to go down to third grade. Now that doesn't hit every kid in our Texas program, but at the same time too that is an option that allows us. We've also got a lot of curriculum from the elementary schools and options that are available. We've got to streamline that in a way that makes that less daunting to be able to use with a student body that's has a really wide split between themselves and skills. But we have to make that more of a priority. Well, it's been important. We had it 2 years ago. Our dad was, or actually last year, our dad was pretty good on that. The fact that now you look at it sort of 3 years and it kind of looks the same in year 1 and year 3. We didn't really change anything, thinking we were on the right track in year 2. We obviously have to go back and refocus on that. So that's something why we want to take a look at that there. So what we are going to do tonight is we have 4 stations set up around the room. First one is going to be questions. That'll be up here at the front. Sarah will be up here to do that. We're going to do basically a 15-minute rotation and we'll swap. Station 2, I'll be over there, and if you want to learn about the Stanford House and what they've been doing, I'll be talking about that and going through the data of the Stanford House over the first 2 years. Station 3, Chris Evans is our reading specialist, and she's in the back corner. She'll be talking about some of the Tier 1 changes. After our data went down last year, we made a number of changes to how we reinforce fidelity in our Tier 1 instruction and reading. We did see a bump up, so we think those things are worth celebrating and trying to do more, but she's going to talk about those things and what we've been doing there. Paul and Kristen are in the back, and they're going to talk about our work with math in the coming year. So I'll say thank you, but do you have any questions for me while I'm standing up here?
Questions? I think I can wait till the stations.
All right, great. All right, you can break up the stations.
All right.
Yeah, I'm gonna follow you to all 4 stations.
So, obviously, if you want to take a look at a little closer at the math data, it's kind of hard to see, obviously, on the screen. But did you understand what Adam was sharing about the difference from spring of 5th grade to spring of 6th grade? That's kind of...
So what happens when you look at the fall data then? Because then the summer school is affecting your summer school, right?
Right.
So if you did fall to fall in 6th grade, how does it?
From fall of 6th grade to fall of 7th grade? Is that what you're saying?
Right, so, yeah, because if you're doing spring to spring, you're actually getting the summer of their 5th to 6th grade summer, right? Okay.
Yep. Yeah, so what we're seeing in the 7th and 8th grade is that they are making progress.
Yeah.
So when the instruction, what we're doing here, is being effective and they're meeting their goals. But something's happening with that, they talk about summer slide, right? And again, it could be the program, the different, the 2 through 5 versus what the 6 NEWA test is. We're not sure, but it's definitely glaring to us of why is there such a significant difference from spring to spring. Because if you think of it, if a student has a 210 at the end of 5th grade, a lot of them are coming out of 6th grade. They've met their goal for 6th grade from their fall score, but they're still behind where they were at the end of 5th grade. So that's a big problem. If you're getting a year of instruction, you're still not back up of where you were. Yeah, so again, we don't know what it is, so that's why we want to take a look at how do we work with the elementary schools as well. So we met with them at our admin retreat, and we talked to all of the elementary principals and the assistant principals about what we saw, and they were all like, yeah, we see this, how can we help? So it's definitely bridging that, that community between the elementary and us.
There's always that difference
Right.
in elementary.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's great.
And you're not even getting the same kid.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not just math.
Right.
It's not reading.
Right.
It's the kids are changing.
Yeah.
In that summer. Just
Yeah.
it's a lot of things.
But
When you
it's
talk to the 6th grade teachers, they have to plan the first couple of months when their 6th graders come in because they're trying to find out their lockers. They're trying to deal with all the basic school stuff.
Yep.
On top of that, they have to start prepping for their testing and their academic. So it's a huge change. That can be affected, in some of
And brain
the
development.
exactly.
Anybody say anything about brain development.
Right.
And what happens in that year, and there's such a wide variation between 6th grade and 8th grade and development overall. You guys have got the hits, so as I can see. But it's constant change.
To see where
toddlers 1 minute and the adults the next.
Yeah.
It's like,
To see them come in at 6th grade and leave in 8th grade, it's really hard.
Yeah.
It's so you get extremely emotional, and they do too, because some of them never thought that they would ever get to that, and they're leaving a different person than they came in.
it is, so I can understand why, Paul Asbelt, who was the principal of the junior high, older kids were in junior high, was in that middle school, said, really, all we hope to do is teach them in school for these kids. We just want to keep them in school, we don't necessarily want to teach them anything, we want to keep them in school.
Give them in school.
But that was,
Focused.
that was a long time ago. But I got what he was saying. I called to ask about all the fighting I was hearing about. It's junior high. There's a lot of fighting going on. He said, well, it's a really tough age.
Yeah.
It wasn't just boys fighting, it was girls fighting, physical fighting. It was like, what can you do? So we just try to keep them in school. So it's, it might not be all what math programs are doing, or what reading programs are doing. We need to approach it a little more developmentally.
I think that's why offering that targeted instruction opportunity, that one-on-one with a teacher
that's
where
key.
it's not the social environment, and also some of the summer opportunities where they can do it on their own time, in their own environment, their parents are there for support, so.
This grandmother had to offer to pay $5 a book this summer to the 4th grader and a 5th grader, well, 5th grader and 6th grader now. Didn't want anything to do with reading. And I know they wanted to buy laptops, so I said, well, you want $50 by the end of the summer, read 10 books now, take $50.
That's awesome.
It didn't work.
No.
No, they got money for their birthday. And my money wasn't for them. They've already got the laptops.
Yeah.
But, one of them came to me today, she said, Mom, I did need to.
But they were doing the math.
They're expecting the $10, but you said the 10. It's like all or nothing. Right. And I think the big thing is embedding it into the community component of it. We've talked a lot about like
Reading 20 minutes a day is important.
Right, but you used to see that. You used to see signs everywhere. 20 minutes, 20 minutes.
Yes, you still do.
Right.
Still
Yeah.
on bumpers
So-
and.
How do we get that out as math, right? I mean, and I had a daughter who's in the district, I still do, but when she was in 3rd grade, I said, what do I do to help her? And the teacher said, stop using your debit card.
Yeah.
Let her show her what it is to use money, and our kids don't. So we're talking about decimals and kids figuring out how to line up decimals. They're so foreign to them because they're not used to having to figure out money and change.
Or time, or
Regular. Right. So if we all work together and they see it out in the community, they see it when they're on a menu in a restaurant, or in a store.
It's funny how you mentioned time on the clock. You remember students, 6th grade students, to sign out, to go to the, to go to the bathroom.
Time is that?
Yeah, what time was that? Yeah.
In our office, we did the little.
I have my,
Yeah, that's
I have
right.
my Fitbit on, it tells me.
Right.
You know, that's the thing. They don't have to learn any of those anymore. That kind of stuff. And I've been watching movies with my about math. Any
Yeah.
movie that has math connection. My 16-year-old is supposed to bring some communication game.
Acadian's CARI testing is a progress monitoring program, much like DIBBLS is for K to 6. We've tried to get 6th grade to do DIBBLS, but we just don't have the staff to cover all 300 kids. So we just dibble any child underneath the 41st percentile and then manage them throughout the year. And if they drop or they need assistance, we put them into an intervention. All the staff receive the data based on how their kids did on their CARI each term, and covering a lot of those strategies that we use in Reading Edge: questioning, clarifying, summarizing, and predicting. We ask staff to use those in their daily language in their content area classes. We also asked teachers to cut back on the use of Google Classroom when responding to Reading Edge work. We found that it was just too much of a distraction, and one of the key elements that makes it effective is the team talk, which is the intercommunication, cooperative learning skills the kids use in the program. So we really tried to focus more on coming back to that. And we realized too that students, when they test on the Chromebooks and they do their assessments on Chromebooks, they were taking twice as long to complete them as when they had to handwrite them. Again, I think the Chromebooks were more of a distraction for them. So a lot of staff have done away with Classroom, Google Classroom, and are going back to hand, and we are teaching students time management. Listen, you have this much time to finish this answer and this much time to finish the next answer. Go back if you haven't finished, because I think a lot of kids have lost the ability to track their management. The personal choice for 4 times, we went from 4 times a year to monthly for our read-ins, which is a 50-minute drop everything and read, anything of your own choice. And we introduced the spring book drive this year, which made us, gave us the ability to pass out books to every single kid in grades 5 through 7 for the summer enrichment. So everybody went home with a book, whether it was their normal choice or not. They could trade with their friends, do whatever they wanted to. And then the Rochester Reads 20 Minutes a Day has come back into, we've got somebody who's really taken that by the mantle, and we got some information on that in June. So this year it'll be everybody reads everybody 20 minutes a day. We've got a lot of specialists in the building. They aren't, they don't have their masters in something, but they've been specially trained. So for Just Words, Wilson Reading, and Orton Gillingham, those are decoding strategy teachers. So they're working with the students who are very low, and we've realized that in comprehension, one of the reasons they suffer in comprehension is because their decoding is weak. And we learned that through the Orton Gillingham program, which has been made available to many of us. We have 18 people certified in junior grade books to do a comprehension shared inquiry. And we've got 40 staff experienced in Reading Edge, 19 of whom were originally trained in that program. This year we did notice, as Adam mentioned, we do have 29% of our incoming 6th graders were recommended for a tier intervention. Of those 87 kids, we only had 38 slots in order to keep those groups small.
So how do you determine who gets those?
I have an entire spreadsheet that includes any kind of data I can get my hands on. Their DIBBLS scores, their accuracy scores, their retail scores, their comprehension scores, their NEWA scores, the teacher recommendations, whether or not they've been in what class they were in 5th grade in terms of a tier. Was it an Orton Gillingham class? Was it reading mastery? There's multiple things they're using. So anybody there was a lot of, plus the other thing is when you've got them coming from so many elementary schools, in that building they may be the lowest child in their building, but we might be getting another group of kids from another source that are way lower. So we came to a point this year we had to decide, do we include the kids who really will take them over the hump? We're going to get them from being kind of weak to being pretty solid. Or I'm going to take the kids who've lost it. They've missed out from day one. I actually had last year, we had about 8 students who came in the middle of the summer from other schools who immediately took over all our lowest groupings. And we realized that our school was doing our district was doing an incredibly good job catching the kids at the lowest levels, whereas kids coming from other school districts weren't doing such a good job because they were 12 years old, they couldn't read. So they pushed a lot of kids who were already here, already programmed in, right out. So in October, we made a huge change. And some kids were thrilled to get out of tier intervention, of course. And then we kept our eye on them. We check in. We have data meetings every term, every half term. Does that answer your question? Again, we focus on the reading strategy. Students are going to come back at the beginning of the school year. Everyone's going to take the assessment on the same day. They can use the materials they worked on over the summer. And our big push, because we see the numbers in 6th grade dropping, we see the discrepancy between the end of 5th grade scores and the end of 6th grade scores, and we've never had 6th grade in the Reading Edge program, and we see the growth in 7th and 8th, but we're not seeing it in 6th, and our big push is to get it in there. One of the reasons why is back in the day when Reading Street was brought on board for the district. It was a K-6 program. So that became Sally Riley, that was her baby. She wanted Reading Street across all the way up through 6th grade. And so the compromise was 7 and 8 would do Reading Edge. The Reading Street program is not coming to fruition as well as we had hoped. So we want to really push into 6th grade and really take over there. So we have asked Kyle for some assistance and maybe getting us the program that is now, it's 2008. It's quite old. They've already got a second version out that's fine-tuned itself much along the way that we did. So we're really hoping to propose that program as an incoming program for us.
All right. Michelle Halligan Foley to front. Yeah, why don't you go over?
Okay, hi Brian.
So we'll introduce each other. Then we're going to do a relatively quick overview of what our goals are. And then you'll be able to just go to the back. It's not a national rotation. It's more just if you have a question, come up and see us. And that's it. So because you've had our slideshow, we emailed that to you. So we'll touch on a few points here. So why don't we start with you?
I'm Margaret Callahan. I'm the new deputy principal. I'm Zoe Cormican, and I'm a junior at Spalding High School.
I'm Brian Casey. I'm also a junior at Spalding High School.
And Justin Roy, the principal.
Jenna Katsanis, assistant principal.
Jason Bushway, assistant principal.
Kevin Hubert, athletic director.
Good evening, Michelle Halligan Foley, I'm the CTE director.
So we'll all take a little piece of this and then we'll break up. So these are our school-wide goals. So we're still shooting for 90. That's what we shot for last year as well. We were at 89.6, I think. So of our students were competent or higher. So we're still shooting for 90. We're pretty close. This year we're piloting a restorative practice, restorative justice. We're finding that our suspensions were off the charts and they really weren't making a difference in behavior. So this is the big thing. So we're going to create a process by which students will participate in restorative justice practice, targeting disrespectful behavior. That was our highest incident, right, infraction, what you say? Yeah. So we're going to target that. We're not doing restorative practice for everything. So there'll be a slide on restorative practice that Jen's going to cover, and then there'll be an opportunity for you to go and ask questions. But the goal is to keep kids in school and teach them how to be respectful, because suspensions aren't working. So that's really the goal, and if it works with disrespect, then we'll carry that with other behaviors. And then lastly, we're going to continue with personalized learning. And this year, the whole school is going to focus on one strategy that the whole school will do each month. So we're working with Ed Elements, which is a really great company. Megan's working with our leadership team, and she's going to give us great strategies that work with high school. we have teachers that are doing a really great job with personalized learning, and we have teachers that are still in the dipping the toe phase. So it's time to jump in, that we're not dipping the toe anymore. So this is going to give teachers a strategy that will work at the high school level, and we're hoping that this will increase student engagement. Good. This is, you wanted us to do it? Okay. So these are our NYCs and IWSs. We're hoping more students are recovered. We want more students to recover. So right now our credit recovery happens in academic support, which is a guided study hall. We have summer school, and we have E-Block. 259 courses were recovered. It's great. I mean, it's not great, but it's not terrible. So we're trying to increase that number. So the next slide. Yep. So do you want to go over this?
Sure. So we started using Edgenuity last year, and we're going to continue doing that this year and really trying to expand it and giving students an opportunity to relearn and trying to get more students to participate in that E-Block opportunity. And then also looking at one personalized learning strategy per month so the teachers can work on those students with that NYC. And then that E-Block again, working particularly with school counselors and trying to be sure that students are taking advantage of that really great opportunity that is there for them for some credit recovery during that end of the school day.
So what we're trying to do is get to the point where they're relearning and reassessing with the teacher before the semester ends. Because we're finding that they're not wanting to stay after school for E-Block. But we have really great guidance counselors that are making great connections with students. So these counselors, we're using them saying, get in here, you gotta get into E-Block. Let me walk you to E-Block, this is what it looks like. And so we're trying to contact parents and using our guidance a little bit more in getting students to E-Block because we have certified teachers there helping students recover. But really the idea is getting them to relearn and reassess before the NYC is given at the end. That's really where we're headed. So.
Just if you guys don't know what E-Block is, it's Monday, Tuesday, Thursday after school, 2:30 to 3:30. All right, so behaviors. We saw a huge increase with our freshman class this year. We actually met with the middle school the year before, and they warned us. The disrespect and defiance increased of 45%, and the vaping increase of 54%. That's a nationwide trend that you see on that vaping right there. We do have the restorative practices that we're going to target this disrespect.
So would you go back there just for a second, Jason? So the vaping went up 54%, but I think the majority of that was at the beginning of the year, yes. And then we targeted vaping differently, and we saw the numbers drop drastically. Did you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so at the beginning of the year, it was an in-school suspension if you had vape products on you, if you were caught vaping or anything like that. We then went to a 3-day suspension with RPD, Rochester Police Department referral, which then they gave a court date, which would involve a fine or community service hours. So we saw a huge decrease as the year went along. We were spending a lot of time with this at the beginning of the year.
But they had a restorative piece to it.
Yes, the restorative piece, they go home with that 3-day suspension. They can buy back a day if they do an educational component. It's put together by our LADAC, licensed drug and alcohol counselor. And then she reviews it when they get back, whether it was performed up to that level that she expects. Then they could come back a day earlier. Second offense was a 5-day suspension, and then you can go up to the school board. Discipline. So a couple of the programs that are going to happen in regards to these behaviors is our Raider Pathways program. This targets incoming freshmen, about 45 of them. Basically, these kids have really struggled to see success in school, not just behaviorally, academically. This program will provide a collaborative, personalized approach to meet each individual's needs. Also focus on work-study practices. I already screwed that up all the time, but work-study practices that focus on creativity, collaboration, communication, self-direction, and responsible and involved citizen. I'll have a station after that you can ask any question that you want. And the restorative practices, I know Justin talked about that earlier. In general, we'll have a station on that.
Okay, so the SAT and PSAT school day
It's just a comparison between the 2 years. You're going to see a dip between the 2017-18 and 18-19 school years, but we're not comparing apples to apples here. It's the first year that we went to a digital format. The year before was the paper and the pencil. So we'll have some true data next year when we compare the digital to a digital. And then we also have our PSAT, the comparison from year to year as well, which changed slightly. So what we're going to do next year is really start that prep for the PSAT and SAT at the beginning of the school year, meeting with team leaders, stressing the importance of the practicing, taking those tests, going on to the Khan Academy, doing words a day. There's so many different activities that we can be doing school-wide, not just in English and math, but throughout the different departments. The next thing is that we're going to focus a little more with guidance, really spearheading this with that score interpretation. So we have the scores, now what? What do we do with this? So really working with the kids with the PSAT, showing them places that they can go to try to improve their scores, and also with the SAT, what can they do with those results? How can they use those as well?
What we're finding is that the more colleges that aren't requiring SAT scores, the less serious our students are taking the SATs, and they don't really care that our school's being graded on the SAT, in terms of, so they don't, to them, it really doesn't matter. It's a test that the colleges aren't looking at. So we're trying to figure out a way for them to take the score seriously by the guidance counselors actually talking to them about their scores. Because before we just mail them home, or we just hand them to students and they're like, okay, and it goes into the backpack and it means nothing. So we're trying to explain the score more. Yeah, okay, sorry.
No, that's okay.
So really quickly, our running start, I wanted to start tracking our data. And as you can see, 2015-16, we had 14 courses. We are now up, as of last year, to 31. I have 2 more courses coming aboard this fall, so we'll have 33, and continue to offer these different pathways for students. You can see our total enrollment went up, and those students who are participating in Running Start and dual enrollment. One of the big changes this year that I'd like to share is before, all students had to do AccuPlacer testing. So they had to do testing for, their reading and their math. They changed that this year, so they do no longer have to take AccuPlacer if they have a certain score on the SAT. And if they do, then they're exempt from the AccuPlacer, and they can go and they can start taking classes. This is huge for us because it's very difficult the first week of school to get all these kids into the lab to do testing. So we've already looked at SAT scores. I've already set up AccuPlacer for those few students who did not make the cut. So we're excited about that. Moving forward, my big goal is creating different pathways to success. So last year, as you know, we did the advanced manufacturing program, and we really focused on a certificate. This year, we're starting to focus on associate's degrees. So we are looking at a couple of things to complete this year, and I'm going to go more detail if you're interested over at my table. We are going to create a visual of pathways. So any parents, any community member can look at this visual, look at the program, and look at all the opportunities that students have. Certificates, associate's degrees, internships, and we're going to list it all out so everyone can see that. This year we're starting our criminal justice associate's degree. I have details on the courses that they'll be taking in Spalding as well as at Great Bay. We're also starting an insurance certificate through our business program, and I have that information. And in January, we're starting an automotive certificate. These students are going to be that much marketable if they choose to go into the workforce right away, or if they choose to go on to 2-year, 4-year college. That's what we want for our students here in Rochester. Moving on, we are looking at nursing degree. I did have a conversation today with Great Bay. I had a meeting, so Mr. Rucuzzi and I have to look at that, and we might have to tweak that a little bit. And we are looking at every single CTE program having opportunities for all our students.
And I just want to point out, I've received just in the last 2 weeks phone calls, 4 now, from principals wanting me to sit down and tell them how we do all of this. So I just say it's Michelle Halligan Foley, but no, seriously, we are offering more pathways for students than any other school district that I've seen, that I've worked with lately. You know, we're sitting in principal workshops and they're like, how are you getting this done? How is this working? So I really like the options that we're offering our students. It's truly remarkable.
Okay, so we did 2 summer retreats this summer. We did a leadership one and we did an environmental one. The leadership was more of just, you know, school leaders, people that can really make an impact. There was a high attendance, people came together, and they talked about how to make the school, you know, a better place. And the environmental one was people that, just anyone that wanted to make, you know, Spalding greener. And that was just, I believe, yesterday, right? So that's pretty fresh on our memories. And I'm going to talk about the leadership one, which was 2 weeks ago, which I don't have anything written down about. But here we are, leadership one. And so the main focus was how can we make Spalding a better place, because Spalding's a better place, people are going to want to be there, people are going to do better, it's a chain reaction. And so we talked about school spirit, which since I've been at Spalding High School, when I came in, the school spirit was not very high at all, but we made that a priority. And it's gone up a lot with pep rallies, and we're making homecoming a big deal next year. And it's going to be, you know, we're really focusing on that a lot, because the better, you know, Spalding is, the more enjoyable it is, the better the grades, I think. And we also talked about the water fountains. Now, water fountains, we gotta get those.
So we have the new water fountains that you fill up the water bottles.
Yeah.
So they really want one on the 3rd floor, and that was a very big topic, to put one on the 3rd floor.
Also a new phone policy, which is no tolerance at all. You can't take your phone out. And
okay, that's how you heard it.
Alright, it's called no tolerance. Okay. Unless the teacher says you should take it out and you can't take it out. Oh, then you can't take it out, which I guess we need to implement and make that's probably going to be a long-term thing, because I know a lot of students are not going to like that at all.
Oh, okay, so I didn't think we'd be talking about cell phones tonight, but since it was brought up, we're reducing the usage of cell phones in the classroom that are non-academic related. In other words, they're not to be out, unless they're being used for academic purposes, right? So no more Netflix, no more whatever they're doing on cell phones. And so the teachers wanted a general rule across the board. So I've been hesitant to do that for a couple years, but I finally, well, these are the guys that are gonna have to deal with it, right? So we've put some of the responsibility on the teacher, all of it on the student, and it's not real life to think that you can sit at a workplace and play with your phone all day, so we're not gonna do it at school. So that was a big topic of discussion in the student leadership retreat as well.
For a long time.
Sure did. But what did you say though? Overall, the students what?
Yeah, at the end we came together and we realized it's probably for the best.
Yeah, good.
Alright, so yeah, but we're really focusing on school spirit. That was probably the main focus of that, and that's been the main focus since I've come in to Spalding, because I know there was hardly any, but now we've got pep rallies, homecoming is going to be a big deal, and the attendance has gone up at games, so that improves the sports as well. So it's, how can we make the class better, together? How can we bring people together? And that's what we've been looking at in school spirit.
And then just tell them about the bathrooms. Redoing the bathrooms.
Oh yeah. We're gonna paint murals in the bathrooms, because the bathrooms, especially the girls' bathrooms last year, had a lot of problems. I mean, that's where people, you saw the vaping increase. That's where it's going down, and they're you would walk past the transition periods, and there'd be 20 people in there, and girls were telling me that they were intimidated to go to the bathroom at school. So, we want to make that just a better place, and we're thinking of painting murals in there and making it look nicer, because, it looks like going in a time machine back to the 90s or something.
All right.
Okay. So for the environmental retreat, we had that a couple days ago, so it's fresh in our minds. So a big thing that we really want to focus on is having assemblies and having these speakers come in and talk to us about climate change and environmental changes, because people know of the topic, but people don't really know what's happening here. They don't know that oceans, lakes, and other bodies of water are filling up with pollution from just bottle caps. And that's another speaker that we want to bring into our school to talk about, because he's a really good speaker and he has a really good agenda, and all students, all teachers, and all faculty need to be informed about this situation that's coming across our earth. So we really want to focus on assemblies and having people be informed, because we can't teach about it and we can't have solutions without people knowing about it. So that was basically a big topic of discussion. Another thing that we really want to do is compost bins. We have 8 trash cans in our cafeteria, and why don't we have compost bins when we have a lot of farmers in Rochester, we have a lot of agricultural businesses in New Hampshire. There's farmers that come into the middle school all the time to take up middle school compost and bring it in and divide it among the farmers. So we should have that in high school as well, and we should keep it continuous, because when you get to college, there is compost bins. I've done research before I came here. And there is compost bins, and we should have that in high school. And I think Mr. Roy and a bunch of other staff and faculty have come up with ways to get that. The last thing we really want to talk about is Earth Day. Earth Day is once a year. We celebrate the Earth. We go around, we pick up trash. I know AFJROTC does it, and a bunch of clubs installed into it. We want to make that bigger. We have, just like what Brian was saying, we have these pep rallies, and pep rallies, we have a point system. And at the end of the year, the class who wins gets a prize. So if we amp it up with like we did with Earth Day, if we do it with Earth Day, people have more participation. And with more participation with the Earth, people are going to be more informed about it. And it's going to go right back to that chain reaction of people going to know about it, people are going to care. And then we're going to start a club, and we're going to save the Earth together. So that's basically
There were 15, right, action items?
Yes.
Out of yesterday's meeting, so it's very good.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah.
Do we want to say it?
Yeah. Well, I would ask them. So this is what we, yeah, go ahead.
No, this is just like a year in review, goes over all the highlights, and it's about 3 minutes, 32 seconds long.
So this is what we can for you. So, yeah. So we start our faculty meeting with this at the beginning of the year. We also put it on social media and on Facebook. So, all right, you want to explain the stations?
Yeah, so at this point, we just have stations set up around the room. So we have the 4 different stations that you can just go and pop in, ask questions. Feel free. The students are going to be with Mr. Roy and Mrs. Callahan at the principal and deputy principal stations. They can answer some questions based on the student retreat and just questions on behalf of the Spalding students as well.
So it's not a rotation, just
Really interesting stuff. And then we're also doing a risk management next year certificate and insurance certificate.
It's amazing, sure.
Yeah, so we actually are, we have a company out of Portsmouth that is going to foot the bill and pay for the students to do this program. So again, they'll be taking some running start at our school and then Great Bay.
Great Bay.
Yeah.
This is 11th grade?
So this is 12th grade.
12th grade.
This is going to be 12th grade. Yeah, so again, we're trying to do the 10th and 11th grade, get their completer certificate. Their 12th grade, they have the opportunity to do whatever other pathway they want to take. So these are the 2 big new ones next year, and then in January we start the automotive certificate. So
it's huge. There's a lot of interest in it.
the criminal justice is full.
Yeah.
It's huge. And then the automotive will be full. Right now he's at maximum capacity for both year 1 and year 2 for the completer. So we have a lot of students who want to work with their hands. They want to do different things. So very exciting. Thank you.
There's going to be less cut the cords here.
Right.
We're going to take something from you, but we're also going to have you understand that there's a way to kind of get back on the right path.
And this actually allows you, the reason that you're being disrespectful is probably very different. And so it allows you to kind of personalize it, for lack of a better word. So that's good. Then you can address what the root of it's getting to the root cause as opposed to just treating the symptom all the time. You can't just keep treating the symptom. That's not going to change.
Well, because you also have to teach, I think that component's missing in high school, that it just naturally happens in elementary school and middle school. You have your time out, and then you talk about that, right?
What are you going to do differently?
We just have to slow it down at the high school, so that they have that chance to pause and reflect and think about, what are your triggers? Is it the classroom? What happened?
So overall,
But at the end of the day, and that's why I bring up the training and teaching, you really want everybody to own it and understand it. So many of them don't even know what you're saying. They've heard it, but they're probably worried about it brought out. So really getting down to what is it, and we're going to practice it this way, and this is why. This is what you can bring back to your classroom too, so it's not elevated, because teachers is the first line, right? And obviously these are
So like an athlete training, the first thing, the Department of Corrections actually runs it. So the first thing they say is, you don't go to jail for a year for jaywalking. So there's infractions, there's levels. Obviously, if you do something at this level, but these level offenses that we're looking at is we're trying to change the behavior. We're not trying to change the consequences. We're trying to change the behavior. Not doing this by saying, okay, take those steps. So it's kind of eye-opening. So it's a lot about restorative. It's kind of go, oh yeah, you wouldn't throw someone's reason for jaywalking.
Exactly, and try to connect with them that way.
It's the kids who traditionally would have gotten that one day of in-school suspension. It's like, no, it's going to be a little more than that. You're still going to have some academic time built in the day, but what are you looking at?
But there's definitely things we can do to cut down transportation, like idling we were talking about in the parking lot. Even though it's not supposed to happen, you can still see it. And I know, was it Farmington? Somewhere, they just banned it completely, and I think that'd be a really good step and a really obtainable step that we can do this year, as well as staying away from plastic.
Well, if you figure that out, let me know. Because the Rochester Child Care Center, we have notes right on the front door saying, please don't let your car, it's illegal to run a car.
Yeah.
If you're not in it, and some people leave kids in it and leave them running, you know, and I just want to go out there and put a ticket on them.
Yeah. Citizens arrest.
You know, but there are a lot of things we can do. It's small steps in plastic bags.
So Maine just did that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or in California, they charge per package by like 5 cents or something like that. People are like, okay, then no back for me. Like that, just little things like that will cut that down, and then eventually we're gonna go free. And I'm waiting for that day because that's the day that we need to come soon. Because not, it's gonna be too late.
When you go to a new building, right, it's all new people and staff, and if they can make that effort when they start, people will look at them in a completely different way.
Another key component, I think, is the relationship building. You know,
Right.
So when they get into the high school, like typically, relationships are, they meet with their teacher, they meet with their teacher this year, they'll have a coach or a mentor to like check up on their grades, their behavior, their attendance, and they'll be setting up meetings and all that sort of stuff. So hopefully the more personalized learning will help them get a fresh start. Yeah, I think some kids will going to want to gravitate out of the program because they're doing really well, and they want to do some other stuff. But I also think there's going to be if you look at a 4-year, 5-year plan, I'd like to see this go for 4 years, and like ones to follow behind it. And we're going to start planning that in October. So we're waiting to see.
So you see that continuing in the sophomore year?
I would like it. I would like it to.
Okay, I thought it was just going to be.
Well, I mean, right now it's just that first year and see how they do. But if they're doing really well and they need that personalized learning, close relationships, it might be, I don't know, a smaller version next year. You know, like that sophomore group might be 25, because the other 20. Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't think all 45 will be, all right, they're fixed, you know, here you go. So, so that's why, you know, if you ever visited a MET program, you know, so you go to school like internships, stuff like that. So that's one idea we're throwing out there. It would be a much different
Well, it's a lot of possibilities.
Yeah, a lot of possibilities. But we're excited for it. Something new. But, you know, I think our freshman year, the academics were pretty rough this year. You know,
Because I think there are a lot of them.
We have a lot of clubs that hit those kids. Like we have Dungeons and Dragons, which is drawing a really eccentric crowd that you wouldn't see going to a leadership retreat. But they'll go play Dungeons and Dragons. We have a chess club that a lot of kids go to.
But there are kids that just don't want to be part of it.
These pep rallies though are really hitting home for them. We're getting hyped up. Like it's crazy. Like the first time, like Mr. Boyd was kind of skeptical. It was like, I don't know how this is gonna play out, but they were hyped. We're all really involved and stuff like that, and it's really showing through. And then after those pep rallies, you can see the increase in these clubs, and more people are like, I want to start this debate club. I want to start this club. So it's really exciting to see all these kids because they are
wouldn't expect to like get up and start cheering loudly and
We're doing it.
Yeah.
But again, there are some kids that are not going to want to do anything. And we're not going to force them, but I can tell you we have lots of options at Spa. So if a kid just does not want to do it and they want to go home, there's not much we're going to do about that.
I know. It worries me because after 4 years at Spalding, we're left with those people as citizens that don't want to do anything. They don't want to stay here. They don't want to keep somewhere. They don't want to. They barely do jobs. Somebody's basement.
That's why, like, again, like this school spirit thing is really helping us because those people that aren't joining really anything, they go to things. Like they go to football games, they go to lacrosse games, they go to all these things. And they're getting a little bit more involved in a little bit. So as they become seniors, juniors and seniors,
even if they're
going to start
become
joining.
the best fans in the world, you need fans.
Yeah.
You know, that they can just be, how do you be a good fan? How do you be,
Yeah. And that's why maybe we should focus on maybe getting like fan buses, like again, like we did, like maybe if we get more of the participation, fan bus to Dover game, because Dover's a big brand, and, you know, right now. Yeah, we only high school, I think.
That's good. The rest of them were elementary, which is wonderful.
Yeah, we know right now. Right, yeah, things could change tomorrow.
We only have one core
Yep.
content,
Yeah.
one ELA, but everything else is EUA.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, we have EUA, Power, ISS, FCS.
Dear.
Health. What? Health. FCS. Art teacher. She was a computer teacher, which was art.
But they all moved, like, they all moved either to the high school or they went to
Right.
the ELA, they became a reading teacher.
Oh,
So
they, yeah,
it's all-
they still in the district. But that was her passion.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
OG.
So I was just going to tell you real quick too, we focused our school-wide goals based on some of this stuff as well. So we picked number 36 and 39 is how do you develop relationships, or how do you develop that rapport for the whole staff to focus on. And the other one is how do you, it's high expectancy for low expectancy students. Like how do you raise the bar for low expectancy students? So those are the two that we had the staff focus on, because we just wanted to be staff-wide that they're looking at how are you developing those relationships from day one.
Yeah.
Try to negate some of these problems before they happen.
I've had the floor for a while, so you can take it over now.
I don't really, can't think of any questions. Anything you want to highlight?
No, I was just, we had a little less than 1,000 incidents with defiance, disrespect, etc. last year in that category. So, that was the major one that we had. We had 3,200 something, but if you take attendance issues out, it's around 18, so a little less than 1,000. That's a lot, just in one category. Yeah. So we're trying to figure out, we can't suspend for every single one of these incidents. It's not going to do anything. It's not going to go anywhere, except we're going to have more time out of school, and we're not reteaching or figuring out what's the problem. So it's really a chance for kids to pause, and instead of going in an in-school suspension setting or out of school before we even get to that point, how can we just pause and sit and reflect? Have you look at your behaviors, how they're impacting the people around you, and what are some things we can do to fix this? And it's
I have more copies of the presentation up here because there's some stuff I'm not going to read every word of it as we get into especially the second half of things. But the first half is the data, and the second half is what I really want to focus on as far as what some of the changes that are happening. I'll go over that here in a second. But yep, this is us, Glen Carlson Academy.
Use the left side.
I might have to get Jason Bush right there and just say dang.
I was going to say.
I've got mine here.
Just left side.
Through the years, and this is pretty much us, we usually hover around 100 students. There's 131 students that were through this year, 11 graduating with BCA diploma, 7 dropouts, and 12 for the high second GED. It's definitely the left.
Maybe it's too far.
Just to walk by it every time.
Yeah, I'll just keep going back and forth, right? Our enrollment data, this is kind of a breakdown of the numbers. The big number with the 12th graders is usually when you see a big jump like that, that's a lot more students enrolling in the high sec diploma. Not necessarily the diploma there. As in any given year, about a third of our students were new this year. And this graph's really just showing the students who are coming in when they're new. They're usually coming in at a low credit number, 0 to, which is a little different than BCA in the past. They're coming in 0 to 3 credits, maybe 6. And students even coming in with 13 credits, more of them are opting for the high set than they are opting for a BCA diploma. I really am going to walk by it. Most of them come from Spalding, but we do get some homeschool students. We get some, a few that were in out-of-district placements every year, and then some from other programs. This is I keep the DOE early warning system in there just you know, this is from the state, more than a third of our kids are high-risk kids coming in. And then those medium-risk kids are, put them around some high-risk kids and they become high-risk kids. We change month to month. It's a little transient at BCA. So this is kind of the new enrollments, and you'll see late September, early October, November, December, we'll get a bunch of students. I actually expected that we'd get more after the second semester, but what happens is we tend to get them at the end of the year too. And so it changes your classroom, it changes what we're doing and what we're facing there. Competency-wise, probably about a third of the students are not passing one or more classes at any given time. We often say about a third of the students are at the school because they really need it and really want it. A third of the students are at the school probably because state law says you have to go to school till you're 18. Some of them we bring along, and some of them might end up in the high sec program. I'll do that. But of those students that don't pass summer school, online learning, a lot of the same stuff as the high school. A lot of them end up passing eventually, and that's the total number of just IWS failures there, which often represents just a few students. Ends up the bulk of it. There's some students that we don't get along at all. For that. So this would be the math, the science, the reading, the NEWA scores, and the way that I do the quartiles, you're looking at the winter. We tested them in the winter this year in the spring, which normally we do the fall. So what I'm hoping to see at any given time is the red bar is getting larger over here, the blue bar is getting smaller. That's sort of pretty set. And that generally happens with the students. The students who are there, it's a smaller atmosphere, smaller classrooms. They're gaining some skills, even if they were behind to begin with. So math did all right, science does all right, language arts, and last one should be reading. And it's a reading. And the reading did fairly well this year. Normally, so this year, actually, next slide. So what all the English class used this year was the Gates JT reading test. It's probably hard to see on here. But again, what we're looking at is the blue bars being students testing at the beginning of the year. So if you look at the comprehension scores, we had students at the 4th, 5th, 6th grade level, in the fall. And then in the spring, you're hoping to see the red bars go up and blue bars down. That's pretty normal for us, spread-wise. Post-secondary, this year was a good year as far as students getting accepted into post-secondary programs or finding post-secondary pieces, and what you're finding there is the students' plans. Some are starting right at Great Bay, some have already started. I have 3 in an LNA program through my turn, 1 in an HVAC program through my turn now. And a lot of them, their senior projects, which we'll look at, were a big piece of them making that step from us to where they're going next. So the plan for this year, I'll quickly go through continuing what's working. I know you guys have heard me speak before about the phases and the gateways, and I'm gonna run through some of that because the improvement plans this year are really centered around. We were recognized might not be that. It's a nice way to put it. We are a CSI school with the state, meaning that we need a comprehensive school improvement plan because of our graduation rates. Because of the students we have, we do not have a high percentage of students who are graduating with their cohort. So there's 8 schools, there's us, and really 6 other charter schools, very small schools they targeted, probably schools that are also helping students who are already behind graduate. The good news is it comes with some money, it comes with some time, it comes with some opportunities to really do some things for Bart Carlson and really these at-risk kids in Rochester. So I want to focus mainly on that. Yeah, maybe we should skip to it. That's us, that's our library, that's kids reflecting, that's kids messing up my office, that's the gateways, that's the gateways. All right. So here's the school improvement plan. So what we went through was a diagnostic review. A company in West Ed came in, did some interviews with parents, with administrators, with students, with teachers, Some of it was a survey online that parents were able to do, and through the visits in the school, kind of came up with a really kind of 3 areas that one big strength, and then 3 areas to focus on for rapid school improvement. And so that's in there, and we'll go through it quickly, but this gives a little bit about what the diagnostic process was, I can even pretend like I'm doing it, right? So in the area of strength, and interestingly, one of our area of strengths also is kind of one of our weaknesses. It's sort of a double-edged sword when it comes to the building a strong community intensely focused on student learning can sometimes have, with the personalized learning type piece, we can be so flexible with students that it really helps them grow as far as their scores go. And if you're not ready for that flexibility, it turns into behavioral type problems. So we're always kind of balancing those 2 things there. And then the areas of weakness or the opportunities for growth are, so increasing capacity to meet behavioral, social, and emotional needs of students. We'll talk about what we're going to do for that. Strengthening channels for open communication and active progress, monitoring school improvement goals, really increasing that communication and making sure we're all focused on the same piece. I think sometimes you get so busy, different people are pulling different directions. And that's one thing that we noticed. So what we did, the first part of the CSI grant, we had to do before September 30th. So I've been working the end of, I know, right? So the end of last year, and then through the summer to figure out, all right, what's something we can do? What are some high leverage items that we can do right away? So one of the things is we're bookending the whole kind of kickoff at the Brown Center. So we went in June with the students to do some strength inventory, get some feedback from the students so they have input in what they think school improvement wise would really help them as learners, and then we'll kick off September. The second week of September, we'll be going back, revisiting some of that, but we also, like you saw, we're constantly getting new students. And having a culture in place that a new student can walk easily into and not try to make their own path in what looks like a couple different cultures is something that we're really trying to do. There's a trauma-skilled school conference, so the National Dropout Prevention Center, and you'll see more of them in the slides there. This year I've been working with them a bit. I went to one conference, they invited me down in February to talk about Bud Carlson, especially the 21st century skills, the gateways and stuff that we're doing. And I did that in February, and then in June, myself and 6 other staff members went to their trauma-skilled school conference, which is really half conference, half workshop. And what's come of that is really part of what's going to build for the rest of the grant. So what the staff who were down there unanimously wanted to do was to become certified themselves as trauma-skilled educators, as well as certify the school as a trauma-skilled school. And I know that the trauma-sensitive, trauma-skilled, there's been a lot of talk with that. One of the things that the Dropout Center has done, I think, is really smart in their model. And it's a place that it doesn't feel like it's something extra we're doing. It's something where we can start to fit in some of the personalized learning, the MTSS stuff within what we're doing with a knowledge base. It's not, no one's going to be a psychologist after this. What it is building a culture and a climate where all students can succeed. But especially with Bud Carlson, where 20% of our students are or have been homeless in the last 18 months. 20% of our students have one or more deceased parent. Almost none of them have lived in the same home with both parents for, I think, 3 of the 131 have lived in the same place for 5 years with both the parents in the house. And that would only touch on what some trauma things can be. So making sure that we have common knowledge within our staff, making sure that we're creating, as a staff, a culture so the climate is there to help the students and help all of us, really, when it all comes down to it. So these are the sort of steps that they have there, and then I wanted to make sure you guys have them, because really when we start coming to the implement and assessment, this would be a 2-year process we're doing. I met with Dr. Addis last Friday, and we have 2 more staff members from them coming, from the Dropout Center coming the 21st, 22nd. So this is the part where when we talk about policies, practices, implementation, verification, where you know, we really need to be working with you guys, with the instruction committee, with the school board, with other stakeholders, to one, make sure that you guys are familiar with what we're doing, and then you're holding us, students, whatever, there's an accountability piece with all that we're all using the same language for. And I do, I can appreciate that part of that. So the focus of the training is really on building resilience, cultural transformation, community engagement, staff readiness, and academic integration. Many of these things are things we do, but you know, as far as the community engagement and what we're doing with students, and but it could always be more. I think that the academic integration we're able to do pretty well, but I think that this is the staff who love the idea of this framework to help get all staff on board. Because in a small school, it doesn't take much to have one staff member not on board to not help you. Yeah, I kind of just talked about that, step 4 and step 5. That's where I wanted to make sure you had that stuff there if you were more interested in what we're doing. As we have the trainings and stuff, people are coming from the National Dropout Prevention Center. It's supposed to be a whole school piece, right? So bus drivers, cleaning people, everyone's supposed to be involved because it doesn't take much. If everyone is on the same page, even just with vocabulary and what we're trying to do sometimes, or even just even on the knowledge-based piece. I think for a lot of our students who have, it's hard to tell what some of our students' triggers would be for when they're going to lose it. If you're creating an atmosphere where those triggers, you don't need to know exactly what that trigger is going to be if we've created a culture and a climate that, everyone's aware that might happen and knows the steps to kind of take to not stir the pot a little further, if you will. So, look at that, we got to the end. Was that 9 minutes?
We got 81 more minutes.
After the first, I'm going to grab a guitar and a timpani then. I went through that quick. Do you have questions on what was there? Yes, sir.
Yeah. Actually, the one slide went about the focus of model and training, building resilience, and cultural transformation. What struck me about that is that you can apply that to any school. So I guess I'll be interested to hear more about it as you go through it, because you're talking about trauma-based classrooms, you've been talking about trauma-based classrooms. A lot of that thematically is very similar to other schools as well.
Yeah, and the great thing is the factors that build resilience, some of the things the district does now, right? So that the autonomy builds resilience. So the personalized learning piece, having choices to what you get to do, having choices is just a small thing. And they spend a lot of time on really focusing on those resilience factors that, you're right, every school. And so that's why, Jason Lee? Oh, yeah. I didn't mean to call him out. Whoops. Oh, it's on TV too. So with the Raider Pathway program, himself and a couple of the teachers over there are going to come meet the Dropout Center folks on the 21st, 22nd to get an overview of what we're doing. But the idea is feeder schools in general. So whether it's the middle school, we don't really give any from, probably Wakefield, there's some other type of, and maybe even almost any of the out-of-district places where we end up pulling the students back in, which happens quite a bit, will be, even the beginning of that training, the knowledge and the resilience factors piece would be really, really useful, I think you're right.
Cool.
And they're great folks.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear that. I mean, I think it's strange, oddly enough, it was great to be recognized in this way by the state. Because we're going to get some resources that we wouldn't otherwise get. So
that's exactly right. Yeah, and the folks at the Dropout Center, they really are a nonprofit. They're doing it at a rate that's below 20% what most places would probably charge for something like this. And they're really good at what they do. They've been doing it for a long time. Any other questions?
Yeah.
I'm familiar with strengthening families practices and
Yeah.
building resilience in families to make stronger communities.
Yep.
I'm just wondering how much work you do with families with these students, or is there interaction with families as well as the student themselves?
So right now, as far as this program goes,
Yeah.
it'll be, like I said, be a 2-year implementation. That's one of the things that we've been talking with them about. So, and whether or not it comes, it'll have to come some way, right? And I think that whether it's through, maybe we'll be able to do some social work with some of the families. We've increased family involvement for sure. I mean, I think that's one of the things, there was a slide of having all the families who did come to our senior gateway night, where the seniors were kind of doing an overview of all their senior projects, was great to see, and then it's like, oh wait, I need you guys when you're freshmen. Because typically, I'll set a parent night, and all the staff will be there, and then 2 parents come. So we do have to find more ways to connect with them. And so, right, if it was a night where it's like, hey, come meet with us and we'll help you do your taxes, or whatever it's gonna be, that might be the
Get them
way
in
to
with
go.
food. I mean, it never fails to get them, feed them that home.
You're right.
And
I
then you
think
can
that's what
sneak some
changed.
information.
That's
But
right.
it, a lot of the trauma conversations and the resiliency conversations now are switching to a generational approach. It's a 2-generational approach, not just a 1.
Yeah.
Whatever group you're talking to, there's either adults or children that are affected by each other. So to really solve the problem, sometimes you have to look at the whole.
Get that piece. And I think as we are able to add some of the restorative justice piece where the parents are involved. I mean, one of the nice things, all the students, when they do their gateways between the phases, their families there, and their families seeing them in a real positive light, right? Showing that they're clear and effective communicators, they're self-directed learners, they're, in a new direction. But focusing on the resiliency factors with parents too. Yeah, because it wouldn't take much to work on their resiliency and then come home and have it be frustrating.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Was that 89 minutes?
Close enough.
All right.
Anybody else? Any public comment tonight? Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye?
Aye.
Well, that's true.
Not a quorum.
Unofficially. Thank you.
Thank you.